Y'all planning for this?
Welcome back, TPR Nation. This is Jamie Shalansky to episode of Worlds to Conquer, and I have a question to ask you. How many times have you gotten results back from your team that make you shake your head in absolute agony and frustration because the results you got back were not the instructions that you gave your team to follow? Or better yet, what if your team screwed up because they did follow your instructions? They did do exactly what you told them to do, but the problem isn't your team. The problem is you. If you are anything like me as a leader, sometimes we articulate something because we're going 100 miles an hour. So we hand off a task, we delegate to a team member, we tell them what we want done, but we don't paint the ending in mind for them. We don't start with the end in mind. And so instead, we give them limited instructions. We give them very few details. But in my mind, it was crystal clear exactly what I wanted you to think through and what I wanted the results to be. So who's at fault? Who is to blame in your organization when your team does exactly what you told them to, but you failed to give them the proper training and the proper instructions to actually execute on what you've asked of them? I pound my fist on the table constantly with my team members about their professional development, about their career progression, about how I want them to constantly level up. And the reason that I do that is because it is so important to our own growth and to our own culture that we are constantly educating ourselves and we're letting that ego go and we're learning from other opportunities every time that they present themselves. And the very foundation of that professional development, the very fundamentals, begins with training. What are you doing when you onboard a new person into your office? What does your training protocol look like? At our RIA, Shalansky and Associates, we have a pretty robust learning management system built out on our website. And so when we do onboard a new team member, regardless of which pod that they join, the financial advisors, the relationship managers, or the operations personnel. Oh, and before I forget, yes, I get asked this question a lot. Yes, we are actively hiring for all three positions: financial advisors, relationship managers, and operations team members. And no, you do not have to necessarily live in Alaska for that career to take place. I get asked this question a lot. We do a lot of interviews. We got a lot of inquiries at our RIA up in Anchorage, Alaska, Shalansky and Associates, but not everybody makes the cut. Not everyone gets through the gauntlet. We are looking for very specific individuals. We hire people with, above all, integrity, people that have grit, people that have the ability to take accountability for their own actions and to constantly be in an environment where they want to see other people succeed, not just themselves. Not everyone has that in them, and that is okay. That just doesn't fit into our culture at Shalansky and Associates. So should you throw your hat in the ring? Maybe, but does that mean you're going to make it past the gauntlet? And we have a very strenuous, laborious process to get into an interview at Shalansky and Associates. I don't know. That depends on you and what your goals are and what your objectives and what you can bring to the firm and what kind of culture that you want to help promote within. Okay, so when you onboard with Shalansky and Associates, you're going to go through a rigorous team training, and that team training is going to set the fundamentals of our company up. We're going to talk about our history. How did we begin our practice? And how do we grow this incredible, monstrous-sized RIA up in Anchorage, Alaska, where most of the continental United States thinks that we still live in igloos and we all mush around on our dog sleds all day long. And it's a true story. If you can do it here, you can do it anywhere, right? So as we talk about that, we talk about our history and our culture and our founders, how we got started and what our passion remains to do today. If you don't grasp and understand and get to know our why, then the how won't matter at all. You'll never get it. So we start with those fundamentals and we get the base bone of that education done. And no matter which pod you start with, you're going to go through this same process. And then we're going to talk about the difference between prospects and clients. We don't have customers. In fact, it's a word that we don't even use in our our practice. If we onboard a new person, they keep saying a customer, we'll correct that language until we've worked it out and hire them. A customer is somebody that's transactional. That's a retail person. We're not looking at that. We're looking for clients. And clients are people that we want to develop lifetime relationships with, potentially multi-generational relationships with. And we have prospects, and we talk about those prospects and why they're seeking us out and what value we're going to provide to them during their consultation, which they pay a fee to meet with one of our financial advisors with. Right now, we're charging about $497 for that initial consultation, and that's an hour of time. You get an hour of expertise time in which you can come in and ask any questions, and it's the no sell sell. We don't sell the client during it, but if we provide enough value, if we give them all the answers that they've been looking for, and be honest when we tell them that we don't know the answer to something, by most of the time we get done with that appointment, they will be asking, how do I continue working with you? How do I continue this relationship? So we call that the no sell sell approach. And then we talk about our teams. We talk about the different pods and how they correlate to one another. Our pods are like a triangle. You take one side of that out and the thing's going to collapse in and on itself. And this is different than many financial advisory practices out there because we are very team oriented. A lot of practices, when we meet them, the financial advisors, they're the ones that are calling the shots and running it. And maybe if you have a solo practice, that's how you need it to be. And we talk about them being quote unquote the bread earners, right? They're the ones that bring the revenue into the company. But at Shalansky & Associates, we charge really high financial planning fees. And the reason we charge those high financial planning fees is because we know with absolute resolve, no doubt in our mind, we are going to deliver massive value on a continual basis to all of our clients. And we know that that is going to happen because we have 3 different pods working in concert with each other. This is not just about meeting with your advisor 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 times a year. This is about all the points of contact that you're going to have in between with our operations team, who is responsible for the movement of money, and with our relationship managers, which are responsible for fostering and nurturing that relationship throughout the duration of the client's time with you. Now, relationship managers, unlike other practices, ours cannot provide financial advice. That exclusively falls on the shoulders of the financial advisor at Shalansky & Associates. And because we are such big advocates of following the surge schedule, which we've been running for probably 30 years, and every single year enhancing and getting better and getting better and getting better at how we do it, then we also know that the financial advisor is going to have perhaps fewer and fewer points of contact on a regular basis with the client because lean in financial advisors. If you're listening to this, I'm going to share a secret with you. Your clients do not always need you to get something done. In fact, most of the time, they don't need you. They need you when it comes to providing them with advice. But if they need a distribution from an earmarked account that's already set up, if they want to tell you what time they're going to take their required minimum distribution, maybe it's January, maybe it's June for the year, if they need to update their address, if they need to schedule an appointment, they don't need you. They just need somebody supporting you. And so our team all values one another in those different pods. The financial advisors don't quote unquote outrank the relationship managers or our operations team. We have to be willing to work in concert. So once you've onboarded with Shalansky & Associates, you're going to go through that foundation training of who we are and why we're doing what we're doing. And then you're going to learn about the pods. Who does what in our office? How do I pull the right lever at the right time to make sure that we're all working harmoniously? And then from there, you're going to divide out into whatever role you've been hired for. So if you're a relationship manager, you're going to go down that track. If you're an operations team member, you're going to go down that track. If you're a financial advisor, you're going to go that track. And you're going to learn all of those basics for that specific role. And we call that specific role training. But guess what? That's not good enough. You can't just put somebody in an onboarding package and have them go through some learning classes online for maybe 6 months or 8 months and then stop the education there. You have to be continually, consistently educating and reinforcing those lessons with your team all of the time. Now, for a while, Shalansky & Associates had a same core group. And those core group, we would go through different training, we'd go through different learning lessons, and we got so comfortable with the material and it was working so well, you guessed it, we stopped. We stopped doing it. And so it was such a disadvantage when new team members would onboard and that they wouldn't have that regular, consistent training that constantly happens. And so instead of saying, oh, I guess we should go have them go back and watch all of the lessons that we did, we are now going to elevate our training. And so one of the things that we are incorporating in 2023 is twice monthly training. The first week of every single month is specific pod training. And that specific pod training is going to be kicked off by one of the leads bringing up a very simple topic. This training should be 30 to 45 minutes in length and really extensively going through it with the entire team in their pod. And the reason we're doing it role specific is we want to drive into the granular that might not, because think about our attention span. Everything is competing for our attention every single day. And so if we're on a training session and you're an FA, a financial advisor, and you're listening to something that only impacts the operations team, you're going to tune out until it applies to you. So we want to make sure that we're having role-specific training for people that are involved in the operation of whatever that is. But then on the third week of every month, we're going to have team-wide training. And that team-wide training is going to dive into some specific topic that impacts everyone in the organization. And this is probably going to be about 45 minutes long. Now, the way that we are structuring this, I want to take you from the development all the way to the execution. Because if you're not doing team training with your office, and I don't care if your office is 2 people, 3 people, or 300 people, you need to start doing team training. And it doesn't have to be monotonous. So one of the things that we do is we'll fire up a team training schedule, and I'll go around the room and I'll say, okay, anyone has different topics that they want to talk about. One of the things Matthew Jarvis and I were discussing was that coming out of the spring surge of 23, I came up with 60 questions that financial advisors asked me in between appointments. And so anytime a team member or financial advisor would ask me something on a topic that I mistakenly thought that they knew the answer to, I knew it was going to be team training. Now, this isn't about complex cases. This wasn't about collaboration. This was, how do you separate the cream from the coffee when we're talking about taxes and contributions? This was team members not being 100% clear on the different type of employer-sponsored plans. So if we were helping a client set up a 401k, what was the difference and what are the rules between the 401k versus a simple plan or a self-employed pension plan? And so we began to hear the questions that team members were asking and see that there was a misunderstanding or an ignorance around a certain subject. And ignorance, ignorance we can work with all day long because you can educate ignorance, but stupid lasts forever. So I just started making note. Now, number one rule during surge is no changes during surge. So we didn't implement this during surge. 1, we don't have time or space for it. And 2, we can't make any changes during surge. So instead, in my mind, I'm giving it a place to live. I'm throwing it in our post-surge notes. I'm going out to my team and saying, hey, listen, I had a lot of questions on this. Would anyone benefit from training if I took 30 minutes of time and we set this up on a regular basis? And everyone was like, yeah, that would be amazing. Because sometimes I think I understand something, but I don't really. Now, this isn't me shoving them off to a different webinar hosted by a TPA that's trying to get your business. Well, instead, this is me saying, hey, I want to come in and I want to talk to you about how this impacts our company and our firm. And it's really not that much time to ask for. We're talking 1 hour a month, 12 hours a year, heck, even less than that because we're not do it during surge. So that is what? 8 hours of a leadership's time in between surge periods. That's not a lot to give to make sure I'm reinforcing to my team the values that are most important to us, which in Shalansky & Associates is to educate people on money so we can make empowering, life-altering decisions. So the first step, number 1, was writing down all of the questions that I got asked intermittently. Everything. Nothing was too small. Nothing was too big to not tackle. Second of all, I wanted to break it up on a schedule. It wasn't just something that we could talk about. It had to be the first week for the pods and then the third week for the all team. All team is really important. It's another chance, especially because most of our office is virtual, that we get to see each other and we get to come together and we get to share questions and talk about things. This is not a shoot the hour though. I don't want to get on the call and just do happy hour stuff. I'm not really into that. It doesn't work for me. However, I want to get on there and dive right into things that we can tackle so we have enough time to answer anyone's questions if they occur. One of the things that we just started was we do ask for questions in the middle of our presentation instead of at the very end. Sometimes if you ask for questions at the very end, everyone looks around stupidly and then you only have that one person that is constantly like, I have a question, and they have the most irrelevant relevant questions to the topic. So instead, everyone goes on mute. We have really well polished rules about how we run team meetings. They are something that I reiterate to everyone right before we get on. I said, hey guys, just remember the rules of engagement on this video are X, Y, and Z. And every time we do a call, we make those just like what we do with Surge better and better until they become company policy. And they become company policy in a way that we're able to show and demonstrate everyone else. So when new team members are coming on board, they're not caught unaware of the etiquette in which we conduct ourselves on these team meetings. And so we'll start those off with middle way through. We'll ask for questions and then we'll go right back. Everyone's on mute and we'll finish up the rest of our training session. Now that I have this scheduled, now I want to draw out a syllabus. This is important to me because I think that there are three types of learners out there, those that are visual, those that are audio, and those that are hands-on. And so I want to make sure that I'm really appealing to all of those. And sometimes as leaders, we have thoughts and ideas that we naturally just know about because we have spent so much time in our careers learning and educating ourselves on those. And they're not intuitive to other people and they're not intuitive to new team members as they onboard with you. So one of the things I like to do is have a syllabus, and the syllabus is going to tell you when is the training, what time is the training. The training is mandatory, and if you're not available for the training, then I better have a paid time off request form. We do record the training, but that doesn't mean you get to be absent from it. If you are absent and have to go back and watch it on a recorded session, then I need a PTO form for you. That's how important this is to our organization. So we'll go through, we'll record that content. That content will then live in our learning management system, and it will be linked to our internal wiki. So anytime somebody has a frequently asked question, they could quickly type it into the wiki, they could find the video, and then they go research the answer on themselves. This empowers people to find answers for themselves. This really establishes the baseline that they need to be resourceful. I cannot stand being someone's Google. And this is one thing that my son would probably shake his head and testify to. Because if you come to me, I'm about all the questions, right? If you have a question and you can't find an answer, cool, let's go through it. Let's start discussing it. But if you come to me as your crutch because you're too freaking lazy to Google something, oh my gosh, I want to eat you alive. Do the same thing I would do. Try to find it independently. Stop asking everyone around you that's a mentor to be your freaking easy button because you want to be lazy. Instead, Google it. Google it and see what the answers are. Look it up. Research it. Look online. There's every library in the country is online now, and you can check out books virtually. Go do some independent work before you come to me with that question. And come to me with that question afterwards and say, hey, listen, this is what I found, but I don't really understand it. A lot of times I'll get those kind of questions from our operations team. They'll say, hey, listen, I've got a question for you. I've read the IRS regulation on this. I don't really understand. Is this what it's referring to, or is that what it's referring to? That's legitimate. That's an okay question because you showed me that you thought the question through. You went through the steps to empower yourself to find the answers. You did the research, and now you're coming for clarity. That is always acceptable. I have to laugh because sometimes our team members, when I go, did you YouTube it? Did you Google it? Did you research it? And they'll go back and they'll say, well, all I found was something on the Perfect RIA about it. And I said, great. Did you listen to it? And they're like, no, because it's our content. Yes, it's our content. It was good content. Go listen to it. And the answer is in there. What are you doing? So that syllabus will outline the date, the time, the subject, what we're going to talk about. It will also give them books to read before the training session happens. And I listen to, as a rule, because I love to read. I'm an avid reader. And as a rule for myself, I only listen to business development books as audio on Audible. And so I will listen to them normally one of my walks or my bike rides so that I'm getting myself away from the computer. I'm in motion so that my brain is hyperactive to start thinking about how we're going to go conquer or things that we should do. Oftentimes I find that if I give my team members a book to listen to about a concept that sort of relates to the topic that we're going to train on, it reinforces that lesson, because then when we're going through it, they're like, oh, that's what I read about. Or, for example, we had a team, one of our team trainings was on time blocking. And I had the whole team go out and read At Your Best before our time blocking conversation. And so when we did that, we came back and everyone had to, before they got a little bit of pre-assignment. So before we did the team training, they had to go through a calendar and they had to mark up their zones between green, yellow, and red. And that's when we're at our most efficient time periods. And then we talked about time blocking and how do we use time blocking to our advantage to make sure that we're giving the most productivity when we're in our green zones, when we're in our absolute best periods. Now, what I know is that normally for financial advisors and relationship managers, our green periods are the morning. We are top heavy. We absolutely love getting up and getting going. And what I know about my operations team is that they are terrible with mornings, and that more often than not, it is a late afternoon or early evening is when they really find their stride and they get in their momentum and they're doing really well. So guess when I'm not going to have my team training? I'm not going to have my team training at 6 a.m. when it's just RMs and financial advisors running at absolute capacity and thinking that everything is just great because our energy is skyrocketing. Instead, I'm going to do it about mid-morning so that we can start coming down as they start coming up on their energy scale. So we read At Your Best and we went through this time blocking scenario with everyone about how to stack their work and where to organize it. And as we were going through these time blocking lessons, even though we have been disciplined and talking about time blocking for years in our office, and our team members, our relationship managers, and our operations physically saw us financial advisors do it every single day of the week for every week out of the year, they still didn't think it applied to them until they read At Your Best. And when they read At Your Best, all of those lessons started to resonate, and team members started to say, hey, that's why you do this, or I've seen you do that. Maybe I should set up my perfect week. Maybe I should schedule my stuff a little bit differently. Maybe I should start this time blocking. So I like to give them something that they can go learn. And that could be either it's a full-blown book, it could be a YouTube video, it could be a podcast, whatever is going to set the right framework for what we're about to go and talk about is what I want them engaged in. And this could be a plethora of different things. If we're going to talk about prospect meetings, maybe I'm having them read something on emotional intelligence and body language, or a great book called Exactly What to Say. If we're going to do the time blocking, like I mentioned, At Your Best was a great book to really reinforce a lot of those lessons. If we're talking about contracts and negotiation, maybe it's $100 million deals. So we've got all of these different puzzle pieces that we're putting into place. If a team member reads a book and they suggest it to me, I'll absolutely incorporate it. I'll jump on it with absolute fanaticism and tell them how great it was that they recommended it, because I want to keep their energy level up and I want to keep them inspired to keep doing things like that. And also, I mean, one of my favorite podcasts today, my lead RM introduced me to, and I was like, man, this is great. It's about leadership and development, but it also offered a Christian side. And it really, in a time period in our culture where we have diminished the use of God and we've hidden our Christianity, it showed a place in which that can exist and flourish, and that you can do big things and be empowered by a Holy Spirit and not ashamed to mention that in a work culture. Now, do team members always pick out the books, or who does that? No, it's generally me or somebody else in leadership that's picking out those books. Actually, no, now that I think about it, it's primarily me. It's me. I'm picking out the books and I'm telling everyone what to go and read in preparation of these classes. And because they're not just going to do it themselves. What I find with team members is that they want to learn, they want to do these things, but they don't know where to start. And this becomes so apparent to me when they're filling out their individual professional development. I mean, I've had team members tell me that it doesn't really apply to them. My spouse told me I don't think professional development applies to me because I'm not really trying to advance my career, or I already have my career set up, I already have my education done, blah, blah, blah. And that blew my mind because they are so committed to professional development. They just see it differently because it was on a form and because it looked like it was tied to their career trajectory. They didn't think it applied to them. But how could it not? How could we live in a world where you no longer want to be educated, where you want to plateau in your development? That is so sad to me. I was on a call this morning with about 8 team members, and I said, hey, what is everyone reading? And I could see one team member's face go, oh no, and look around the room like, you better have a book that you're reading. Because the saddest answer in the world to me was not having any book about not reading anything. And as we went around the room, they got to share with me what they were reading. One of them was reading about time blocking and how to manage stress and pressure in the workplace. One of them was reading a book book about emotional intelligence and how to manage situations with coworkers. One of them was reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I thought was amazing. One of them was reading The Richest Man in Babylon, which is even better. So in hearing that, in hearing what my team members are reading, do I have a little bit of insight into their workload right now? Heck yeah. Yes, I do. And now I have follow-up conversations about, hey, let's talk about all the things that are on your plate right now. What do we need to shift? What do we need to get rid of? How can I be of assistance to you? Now, here's the key factor. The day of the training, we're going to follow the syllabus. And the reason that is so important is because nobody likes to be caught unaware. Nobody likes to enter a room and be the last one to know what's going on. Now, training, as you discuss things and as you're navigating through them, it can evolve into other conversations, but you have to do what you said you're going to do. And so when you blindside someone, unless it's a compliance training, if it's a compliance training that came out of nowhere, everyone's going to get blindsided. We're all going to be in the room together and we're going to go through what the compliance issue is. Now, thankfully, we do not have those often, if at all. So we give our team members a lot of time to know what that training is going to be about because we have a diverse workforce. And in that diversity, there are people that are great on spontaneous, and then there are people that are really steady and consistent, and they don't want to be surprised or be called out on the spot. Now, pro tip, I also do this if we're bringing in any type of coach. In fact, we have a coach I'll probably not invite back again because I told him very specifically, I do not want any role playing at this venue because you're going to pick a team member out of the crowd that's going to be super uncomfortable and you'll take a positive experience and make it a negative one for them. And what did they do at the very end? They said this was great. I know I was asked not to do any role playing, but would anyone like to role play? And I was like, what are you doing, you idiot? I told you specifically not to say those things, and now you are saying those things. And so we really need to be conscientious of that when we go into training. And so when we go into these training sessions, we're going to follow that syllabus by talking about the book. Then we're going to talk about the topic that we are discussing for the day, why it matters, and then we're going to go into the weeds of the mechanics of how it matters. So we'll have that financial advisor set the stage of what the client deliverable looks like. What is the conversation with the prospect or client when you're delivering this value add or you're having a conversation on this financial planning topic? We've had so many times that we've had these conversations with people that now we know what we're going to say. We know what we're being prompted to, and we're using words that we hope are effective to clients because this is 100% about changing the lives of our clients. We are not the hero of the story. We are the guide in this story. Our clients are the hero. We are here to guide them through complex situations so they can make really informed decisions and achieve their financial goals, not our goals for them. So if I know a financial advisor does not have the attention span to get really, really granular, then I want to make sure that I'm optimizing the training event so that we're using the best people for the best amount of information to convey a topic or idea. So I will take one of those super successful financial advisors and they are going to deliver the value add. They're going to present the client experience. They're going to show you in that first 15 or 20 minutes of training what it's like for the client when we're delivering that. And we're going to start there. We're going to start with the end product in mind because I want all of the people that are being trained to see what the end result is, right? So if we were baking a cake, I would bring out the cake. I would slice it up. I would give everyone a taste of it. And then I would begin the cooking class. I wouldn't wait until the very end to present that cake and serve it to everyone. Instead, in my training, I want you to know what that finished product is going to look like at the very end. And then once you conceptualize that, once you know where we're headed, now let's figure out how do we get there. And that is when I'm going to hand the baton over to one of our leads. And lead in our office does not mean supervisor. It's not synonymous with supervisor. Instead, it's the person who is leading the conversation because they may have had more experience in a certain area. So every single month, we will take a financial advisor and we will say, great, here's the client deliverable, here's the experience. And then we're going to hand that baton over to one of our protege advisors or somebody in our network and say, great, now let's go through the technical information. Now let's dissect this into how did we get a deliverable product for our clients? And we'll break those down into 5 to 15 minute long training sessions. What information do we ask the client for? What are we looking for on a statement? What information information are we inputting into our custom CRM Infinity? Why does it matter? What are the things that we have to look out for? If you've used any type of financial planning software out there in the industry, you know that it's not all the same. It's oftentimes if this, then that, right? Not all statements look the same. Not all client data looks the same. Not all software looks the same. And sometimes you have to be able to manipulate or finesse the software to get the results that you want based on the information that you have. For example, I have never in my life seen a CRM that handles families well. And what that means is they understand husband, wife, client A, client B, but once we start getting into those dependents, then it gets a little messy. And so we have to be able to finesse how are we going to show the client the information that matters to them, because their family members, their children, adult or dependent, still are involved in this planning process. So we have to be able to look and really say, okay, what passes a straight face test? What are we trying to convey to the client? And how do we make the computer understand the message that we're trying to get across? Another reason I really like this strategy is because I love for people to be involved in the work that they are doing. Now, I don't think that you can make decisions or rule by committee. That doesn't mean that everyone gets to be a decision maker, but it does mean everyone gets a voice. Everyone needs to be open to collaboration. Sometimes when I talk to people, it's not about being stuck in a box. It's about the fluidity of a wheel. We all have to be in motion together. It's more of a circular dynamic than it is a square dynamic, because we are all trying to get to someplace together. So by handing that baton off and asking one of our junior advisors to come in and do a lot of that training and show the mechanics of it, one, I've now established that they have some authority in some type of area, that they have in some way become some type of a professional or have an expertise in giving some type of knowledge to the rest of the team. The second part about this that I really like is that it also transfers credibility and responsibility to not just leaders in the organization, but other team members. Because when we start putting these things into practice, team members are going to have a ton of questions. Now they have somebody that they can go back to and get those questions addressed. A lot of the senior financial advisors that I work with aren't the ones that you're going to go back and pepper 1,000 questions to, but a junior advisor is more facilitating to answering your questions and helping you discover those things along the way. And it's also a really good reminder. One of the things that I tell all the protege, the junior advisors, when they're about to do this training is that we will judge how well your training was by the number of questions that arise after the training concludes. Because if you're really detailed and you're really thorough and you're really taking the time to go through comprehensively and establish all those training practices and protocols, then you wrap it up, you might have 1 or 2 questions, but you're not going to have 1 or 2 questions a day coming at you. And that is really important, because I want my entire team to understand that it is all of us collectively. It is all of us collectively trying to change and influence as many heartbeats as possible, not just the leadership team, not just the financial advisors, not just the relationship managers, and not just our operations personnel. Now, when we get this concluded, when we get all of these training videos done, what will happen next is another person on that particular pod. So in this example, we're using the financial advisors. So one financial advisor, the senior, will go ahead and illustrate what it looks like as an end product. Remember, if we're baking a cake, this is you actually seeing what the cake looks like when it comes out of the oven and has been decorated, and then getting to take a slice of that cake and eat it yourself. And then the second part of that is the training part of it, the technical aspect. So that's going to go and be handed off to a protege or a junior advisor to go through the mechanics of how that works. Now, once we get that stage done, I want to then hand the videos off to another person on our team, and that person has to type up a script. And all of this material lives in our learning management system. So that way, each of our financial advisors or future team members, if they get stumped on a particular question or topic, or maybe it just wasn't clicking during the training session, they can go back as many times as necessary, and they can make sure that they're watching that video or they're reading the instructions on what needs to happen. The reason I don't have the person who's doing the video doing the script or writing the instructions, the policies and procedures afterwards is because you need somebody else, because something is really clear to you when you're the person saying it, but when another person is hearing it, it might come off a little bit different. So we like to tag team that responsibility inside of there. Another thing I absolutely love about the learning management system is now we can put new personnel through it. We can put people in the different teams and different pods. They can go in and see other people's training and go, oh, okay, now I understand what that means. And so we're always making sure that we have access and availability to this information. So if a concept isn't clear, if you're just not getting it at your job, you don't have to feel like a failure. You can go back and look at this content and really go through it and make sure it makes sense. And if you're going through that content and you still don't understand it, it's still not clicking, now you have somebody you can go to. You can go to that protege, that junior advisor, and you can ask those questions. Now, if you're asking those questions over and over again, now we've got a different training issue. And maybe we bring that and escalate to the leads and say, hey, listen, I'm really having a hard time explaining. They're just not getting this aspect of it. And then we can address that as needed. And we do this for each of our pods because it's imperative that if we want people to be better professionals, if we want them to be more educated in the way that we do financial planning at Shalansky & Associates, that we are continually going back and making sure we're giving them the tools to do so. When I was explaining this process to a financial advisor, they brought up an aspect that thankfully does not apply to Shalansky & Associates, but I certainly could see how it could apply to larger organizations or just ones with different cultures. And they said, you know what I love about this is now you've also created a digital footprint so you can go in and see who's really watching the training, who's really going through the programs, who's really showing the initiative to advance their career. That's certainly how you could use it. Everything we touch digitally online leaves some type of footprint or fingerprint behind. So that is another aspect, especially if you have a large organization. One of the ways that we use this with a different company that's not related to financial planning is we have a similar system. They have a large organization. They have 78 employees full-time, and then they probably have another 48-ish on a part-time basis. And the way that they use it is they go through and everyone has a training process. Everyone's been issued different career paths. And before you are eligible to move up in rank or to receive a pay raise, you have had to complete all X amount of training and have an 80% passing score. So they're using it as a way to give the employees the power to choose their career path and also a little bit of control on how they can level up and earn more money over time. And this goes back to that old adage, the work you put in is the results that you get back. You got to give to get. And so it really begins in training. So TPR Nation, let's go through those action items. I really think that number one, you got to have career paths for all of your employees. They have to be empowered into knowing what control they have over their own work and their own destiny. How can they continue to advance? How can they know that they're responsible for the income that they're earning because they were able to do X, Y, and Z? Number two, you've got to have some type of training protocols in place. When are you going to regularly and consistently do training? Training is one of those topics that everyone balks at and says they don't want. But if you do reviews, they say, you know what, I wasn't trained. I don't have enough training. There's not enough education. We're so busy hustling and trying to get the work done. We're not taking time to train employees on how to do it correctly. So we're focused on the quantity and not the quality. So you need to systematically go in and develop a training schedule. For Shalansky & Associates, we are doing this 2 times a month, but maybe that doesn't make sense for your organization. Maybe you just want to do training on a quarterly basis, and this becomes some sort of like, Friday, the office is shut down. We do 4 hours of training in the morning, and then we do 4 hours of some type of team building or recreational activity, or just go walk around the block and get an ice cream cone. Whatever that looks like for your organization, but it must be consistent. It cannot be hit and miss. Otherwise, the work results are going to be hit and miss. Action item number 3, not only do you have to have a training program and policy in place, but I strongly encourage you to have that template and that syllabus built out ahead of time that tells them what books that they should be reading, what resources that they have, what you're going to be talking about on the day of training, and what that end result should look like when you guys wrap up. TPR Nation, this has been an episode of Worlds to Conquer. I am Jamie Shalansky. Go find people who share your values and change the world.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife. The perfect RIA, the perfect